for joining us today. I'm Jarrett Ransom, your nonprofit nerd, and today I am really excited to have on the Director's Dialogue with me, Laurie Strongin. And Laurie is the founder and CEO of a Washington, D.C. based Hope for Henry Foundation, where she's reinventing the pediatric patient experience in hospitals and around the country. So she works with Hope for Henry and the memoir she published called Saving Henry. This has placed her at the forefront of supporting the rights of patients and their families and the responsible use of new medical technologies. So Laurie and I were just talking off camera, if you will. Amazing woman. She's fit me into her very busy schedule, so for that I'm very grateful. Laurie and I just realized that we also have some similar personal passions when it comes to traveling, in particular in vintage campers. So I already know she's going to be great for today. Welcome, Laurie. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, someone introduced me to you. So this is really our first time seeing each other, first time in dialogue and conversation. And I love the nonprofit networking community for that, because I feel most of us are very willing to connect and believe in abundance and just really sharing in that moment of gratitude. What I want us to do during this dialogue of conversation, I want to learn about you as the founder of this amazing organization, and for you to share with us as open, authentic, and transparent as you're comfortable, right? To tell us a little bit about your story. Are you willing to do that?
I sure am, of course.
Great. Well, so let's go back, right? Like, you started the organization in 2003, is that right?
Yes. So my husband and I actually founded Hope for Henry in 2003 on October 25th, which would have been our son Henry's 8th birthday. And we were sitting there, a couple months beforehand. It was really almost impossible to contemplate what we were going to do on a day that should have been so happy and celebratory, but without our son, who had died at age 7. And we thought about all the things that we had learned as Henry's parents and all the opportunities that we had seen about a real gap in services available to kids who are spending way too much of their time in the hospital. And so we took sort of all of our love and our passion for our son and for children generally, and our need to do something with our grief, and we turned it into Hope for Henry Foundation. And what we're looking to do at the time was really to change how hospitals care for sick kids. And we didn't have any money because we had just spent 7 years trying to save Henry's life and also raise our other 2 boys. But we had a great idea. And I think for any nonprofit, if you've got a really solid mission, you have a lot to work with. And so that's where we were almost 15 years ago, and things really took off.
So you're telling me you weren't trained in the nonprofit management arena?
I'm not telling you that. So I should have said that I did have, if you look back at my career, and I've been working for 35 years at this point, it almost looks as if there was a straight line headed to where I am right now because of all the things that I had done that prepared me to be the CEO of a nonprofit. But the honest truth is that I wasn't one of those people who graduated college and thought, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to be the CEO of an organization. It wasn't like that. I got out of college with a degree in political science and English. And honestly, I was at University of Michigan and I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do or what I was really prepared to do. So I went out to Colorado and I worked on the Coors International Bicycle Classic and operations because I loved bike racing and I thought I could kind of do anything. And so I got incredible experience in operations and event planning, which of course serves me really well now. I moved from that into public relations, where I did a lot of writing and media outreach. And then I went and got my master's in social work and went into social policy. And I worked as a like senior level manager in affordable housing and community development. So I ended up having event planning, media relations, public relations, communications, and then nonprofit management experience. And then I became a grant maker through Fannie Mae Foundation.
Oh, wonderful. So many of those skill sets are very transferable, right? And so you've been able to collect and really gain your skills, your knowledge, your talents along the way, and really hone in on that. And that's a beautiful story, because you had shared with us, you started the organization really without large capitals of funding. So tell us about that. When you and your husband were sitting there and you had this amazing idea, and you have this beautiful box behind you or right next to you too. And I want us to get into that, because I want you to share with us about the organization, what you do specifically programming wise, because this was a vision of passion, right? And also of remembering your beautiful son, and to share that with others, and to make other families, just seem less lonely and less scary in those times where I can't imagine it's not fun, right?
Yeah.
It is scary.
Yeah.
So tell us about, you and your husband sitting there, and then you're like, this is what we want to do. We know that we just spent 7 years, probably money that you didn't even have. Not that I want to put words into your mouth, but tell us about that, and really what it took for you to, finance-wise, to start an organization like that.
I mean, I think, from what I've seen over the years as a founder of a nonprofit, I think that there's primarily two ways that organizations start. One is that people have access to a lot of capital, and they start an organization, and then they build sort of the substance of what they do. Okay. And then I think that there's a whole different approach, which is, you prove your concept, and then the money will come. Okay. And that's what we did with Hope for Henry. We had to work really hard to prove the need for the services that we were going to offer. And so, because we were very young, we had our first child at age 30. We founded Hope for Henry. I was 37, and again, medical crises rip you of your emotions and your heart, but they also do strip you of all of your finances, if you had any to begin with. And so we started with a benefit concert, and we sort of shared our mission with friends and family, and over time, I knew when we were 10 years in and we started getting calls from people I had never heard of in my life with offers of, 5 and 6 figure gifts, that we were really onto something. That's how I knew we were going to make it. But I will tell you something, it took 10 years really to get to that point of working really hard every single day. And for the first 5 years, I worked as a volunteer CEO while I worked at Fannie Mae Foundation in sort of my paying job, and continuing to build skills and making contacts and working really hard there. But I was sort of balancing 2 full-time jobs and 2 surviving children, and then over time we got big enough, and a marriage. Yeah. It's what women do, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, what I hear when you talk about this, Laurie, is grit, right? It's grit, it's determination, it's resilience. It's knowing that you have this amazing mission and passion that you're not going to let burn out. And for you to share that it really took that 10 years to see the traction build up, I think is a great story, because I often hear from many nonprofit founders, they love what they're doing, they're exhausted, their relationships are tarnishing, they're getting divorced, their children are mad at them, their friends, no longer see them anymore, because it takes a lot of commitment. And, the cliche of it takes a village. So tell me about, your circle of influence. And I don't just mean financial influence, right? Like, who was there to support you along the way, to cheer you on, to keep you going, to volunteer their time?
So, I mean, I have to give my husband a big shout out because he has never worked for Hope for Henry, but he has served on the board since the beginning, and he has definitely been my Sherpa and my advisor. So, I mean, at some point, after 5 years, we moved out of our house. We moved into an office, and it became my paying job. And I always laugh when people ask me, so like, are you doing this full time now? And I was like, well, if you consider like 70, 80 hours a week full time, then yeah. Like, I don't even understand how people ask CEOs if they're working full time. Like, what? That is the most confounding question I ever. And like, when people ask me that now, I'm like, we have like raised, I think, 10 or $12 million, and our budget every year now is $2 million. Like, am I doing this full time? Am I getting paid? It's a job. It's one I feel tons of passion for, but yeah. And so I couldn't do it without my husband. I check in with my kids because it's personal. It's in memory of their brother, even though it's about so much more than Henry now. But I make sure that it's not too painful for them, that they're okay with it. And I think they're really proud, and they volunteer and they participate and they contribute. And it feels good for them. So they have been immensely supportive. My sister has been and her husband and their whole family has been extremely supportive, as have my parents. And then my community of friends and our board of directors who have been there for everything. They've reached out, and there are people on the board who did not know me when I was parenting Henry, never met Henry in their lives, but they have a passion for our work. And the reason is because it makes a difference. And so this became so much more than about the spark that caused it. And that spark was Henry and his magical approach to life. But you have got to prove your worth, and you have got to track your performance, and you've got to share your impact. And that is what has captivated people, and what keeps people coming back and volunteering, and is the reason that we're still here. And that is something that I tell CEOs all the time. Like, you've got to prove your worth, and it has to be about a lot more than whatever personally drove you there in the first place.
You said so much in that. Thank you, because you're preaching to the choir. One, I always talk to many founders and nonprofit leaders about tracking, right? Like, track your progress, prove your worth. And that's not just the heartfelt story, right? Like, for me, I always kind of laugh and say, we're known, nonprofit leaders, we're known to, like, throw something on the wall and hope it sticks. Throw something out 6 months later and hope that it sticks. Throw something completely different 6 months later and hope it sticks. And that, to me, is not sustainability. That if you're not tracking, as you just said, Laurie, if you're not tracking and trending and really analyzing your progress, your metrics, your numbers, you really can't prove your worth. So I love that you shared that so, like, open and vulnerably, because you're right. And it doesn't happen like that overnight. Those big phone checks, right? They don't show up in your mailbox overnight. It takes a lot of time, a lot of dedication. And like you said, a lot of proving this is what's worked. So let's get to that box in front of you, or next to you, actually. Tell me how that came about. Yes, because I have a feeling that also didn't come overnight. So would you mind sharing with us, what it's about, and then kind of that journey?
Yes, of course. So as I mentioned earlier, Hope for Henry's mission is to change how hospitals care for sick children. And the way that we do that by sort of a very clear mission, which is to provide entertaining distractions, and also not just to make kids happy and to make them smile more, even though that's a wonderful and important thing, but also to ensure that they get better faster with fewer negative effects. Okay, so really looking at the connection between kids' psychological well-being and their ability to heal. So the premise is that medical care is obviously critical, but it's insufficient. that you need to have psychosocial supports alongside to help kids and motivate them to do all the really tough things they have to do to get better. Okay. And so we do that through a number of different approaches. We pay full-time child life specialists to be in the hospital every day, explain to kids what's happening to them. We have amazing, over-the-top fun experiences. We bring in superheroes and professional athletes and authors. We have movie premieres. We have book releases. So things that are that the kids the day before they were diagnosed got to do, they should get to do the day they're diagnosed and the day after and the day after. The average length of treatment for a kid with cancer is 1,095 days. That's a long time. So doing things just once for them is amazing, not enough. So we are there from diagnosis to end of treatment. And that can be years. So one of the most innovative things that we've done is our super path to super duper better. And the genesis of it was something that Alan and I did with Henry. And that was that when he went from his very normal life in Washington, D.C. to Minnesota, where he had to have a bone marrow transplant. So he did not have IVs. He had never done chemo or radiation or been in an MRI or had an IV hanging out of his chest. All of that was very foreign to him. So when he was 4.5 and just won the trophy in his championship soccer game and had to say goodbye to his girlfriend and all of his best buddies and go into an isolated transplant room was like a complete shock, like going from a technicolor world to a black and white world. And so we were thinking, how are we going to get him to take 26 medications a day? How are we going to get him to agree to be stuck with needles every day or every other day? How are we going to agree to get him to do another round of chemo? And so I looked in the room and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a magic closet in here. And Henry, I bet if you take that gross medicine, there's going to be a Batman superhero figure in that magic closet for you. And so the magic closet delivered when he had to do something hard, which was throughout the day, okay? And that magic closet followed us from a hospital in Minnesota to New Jersey, to Baltimore, to DC, back to New Jersey, back to Minnesota for 2.5 years when he was dealing with a tremendous number of complications. And so when I started Hope for Henry and I hired our first full-time child life specialist at a hospital in Washington, DC, I was talking to her about the magic closet and I said, how can we bring this to all of these other kids? And she talked about doing these sort of rudimentary incentive programs where she would grab clip art off the computer and, sort of create a chart and then go grab something from the treasure chest when kids earned a certain amount of points or bucks. And sometimes there was something in the tool treasure chest that they wanted and sometimes there wasn't, but she would grab something anyways. Sure. And so we combined Henry's magic closet with her incentive program, and we created Hope for Henry's Super Path to Super Duper Better. And now, and I can show you, we pay kids in really colorful Hope for Henry bucks. Can you see them? Yes. Whenever they do something really tough. And those things could be anything, like getting a needle stick, tasting a horrible tasting medicine. And I can show you actually a sample game board. So each kid gets a game board when they're first diagnosed. I feel like a game host. And they pick the things that are really hard for them. So this is like vitals and weights. And if you're in the hospital, you get awoken 6 times a day sometimes to get your vitals and weight taken. And that's exhausting, especially when you're in a lot of pain. So this sample patient said, I want to get paid 15 Hope for Henry bucks every time you wake me up and take my vitals and weights. Or I don't like getting that goo on my tummy and having an ultrasound. So when you do that, I want 20 Hope for Henry bucks. And they start saving their bucks in their Hope for Henry wallets. And they tell us what they're saving for. And it could be a Lego set. It could be an iPad. It could be a little stuffed bunny rabbit. It could be anything that they want. And when they earn the amount of bucks that they've decided upon with their child life specialist, they cash in their bucks, they get their gift or their reward, and then they start saving again. And what happens is that they're invested in their well-being and they are adhering to their medical plan. which can be really tough to do without a reward system in place. And so we've offered this at 4 hospitals for the last couple of years, and we've just this year expanded to 5 additional hospitals. And the idea is we're doing a quantitative research analysis of its impact on patients, not just psychosocial well-being, but also their medical benefits that come with it. And then the idea is to roll it out to more and more hospitals.
That is brilliant. I love the incentive. It even brings in some financial literacy, but that is entertaining, right? And the distraction, I know as an adult, I don't even like to go every year and have my blood drawn. So I can't imagine going through this constantly, like you said, every 6 hours, you're woken up, and it's just not fun, any of that. But you also said, you're tying the metrics into this. So you're really doing your due diligence to figure out in these 4 existing hospitals how it takes the long-term positive impact on the children. Brilliant. And you are doing phenomenal work. I'm so glad to hear this from you as a founder. It's just, what you're doing, you're dedicated to it, and you're clearly doing, all the right steps in the past to keep a sustainable future for your organization. So kudos to you, your husband, everyone involved. So thank you for sharing that. And, a little later, I definitely want you to share with us how we can learn more about your organization. So be ready to shout out some more, web addresses and social medias and things like that. So in some of our email exchange, Laurie, I had asked you, being a founder, it's hard. It is hard. I've kind of compared it once to pushing a boulder up a hill. And sometimes you feel like you're the only one holding the boulder, and you're looking around and you're like, where are my people? Like, where are these board members? Where are these volunteers? Where's my family sometimes that can help me, with some pressure here? So tell me, as a founder, what would you tell other individuals and founders, or maybe even kind of in that startup? What are some top tips that you would share from your experience that you would love to tell others in a similar situation?
I think one thing that's really important is that you've got to show gratitude. So when someone does make the effort to volunteer, thank them, give them a public shout out. Like if you're at an event and people have taken their time, no matter how much or how maybe you consider it not enough, but it is a lot because they've taken time out of their lives or outside of their own jobs or their families to come and support your mission and your cause. Make sure that you thank them and you give them recognition and you show your gratitude. One of the things, and I said this to you when we exchanged emails, that I probably write like 20, 30, 40 thank you notes almost every single week. And because I want people to know that I understand that there would be no Hope for Henry without all of the people who support what we do. And I go to the hospital, multiple times a week, and I see those kids in their hospital rooms and they're so isolated. And I know that they might feel forgotten, but Hope for Henry's there to remember them. And when we show up and we have an entire, like Washington Capitals hockey team, or, we bring Kendra Scott to bring their color bar into the hospital and the kids can make their own jewelry, or any number of the other things we do, that we couldn't do that without every single person who writes a check to us, volunteers their time, shares what we do on social media so other people know about us. And so I want them to know that I see them and I'm grateful for it. I also think that you also, to support your own organization, you owe it to the people you're serving to have an involved board and to make sure that you are cycling people off the board when you know that they've done what they can do. And so give them permission to leave and bring someone new in. And that's your obligation to your mission. And then also at some point when you can, hire staff, pay them fairly, because it's a job. And I don't think that successful nonprofits can run on an all volunteer staff. It's just not realistic. And I want to say to board of directors, pay your CEOs. They deserve it. It's not a volunteer job. It's a serious job, right? It is.
It is.
It's a serious job.
You said earlier, people say, are you doing this full time now? Well, if you consider 70, 80 hours full time, then yes, and you're right. It's so much of who you are, but as a professional CEO, yes, it is your full time. And I want to go back to the thank you, because I was raised in the South Carolina. Emily Post etiquette was like, my mom always placed it on my nightside table. But gratitude, thank you notes, just those little things. And in fact, I've got just behind me, and here, in fact, I've got just, thank you notes that I'm sending myself. So not props, they just happen to be right here on my desk, because I often do that as well. Gratitude goes a long way. Donor stewardship, volunteer, appreciation and retention. That just builds to the sustainability of your organization. It builds to the health, the healthiness of it. And just, going that extra mile, even if it is a simple handwritten, thank you note. And these I just had printed. I mean, they're branded for me on the back, but I have a stack of them, and I send out, cards just to say thank you. I love that you mentioned that. I think that's a beautiful top tip to share with other nonprofit leaders, because it doesn't cost a lot. It really doesn't. But in the long run, it pays off tenfold. So.
Yeah, and when I'm writing it, I actually am thinking about the person and what they did, and it feels good. It energizes me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful. I know I want to learn more about you personally, about your organization. I feel like you and I could talk for hours, but we are almost at our 30 minutes. So thanks for everything you shared with us, Laurie. Thanks for sharing about your amazing organization. I would love for you now to share with us, where can we find you? Website, social media. Let us know if we want to support you and if we want to share with others about your mission. This is your time to shine and to spread more about your mission. So please.
So if you want to learn about Hope for Henry, you can go to our website at hopeforhenry.org. We have lots of beautiful videos on YouTube and Vimeo, either one. You can find so many beautiful videos that show the kids we've served and Hope for Henry at work. And we are active on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And all you have to do is go to Hope for Henry on all those platforms. As for me personally, I wrote a memoir called Saving Henry, and it really tells my whole story, and you'll really understand why I do what I do. And you can order that. You can email me anytime at Laurie, which is Laurie at Hope for Henry, and that's spelled out FOR, hopeforhenry.org. And you can also follow me at Laurie Strongin at any of those platforms as well. I'm really so grateful for you to have me on your show, and I look forward to keeping in touch. You'll be getting a thank you note.
Yeah, so will you. No, I love it. Thank you so much. The Directors Dialogue is a great place and a platform for leaders just like you to share your journey and to share some of the bumps along the way so that we can all kind of learn as we grow. So thanks for being on, for saying yes, and again, telling us more about Hope for Henry. So I know I'm going to check out your website, and I love the YouTube channel as well. So thank you, Laurie, and I look forward to following you further.
Terrific. Thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.